Hey guys, it's me Seren, back with another video. This video is going to be a review of a recap and review, of episode 7 of Lovecraft Country. So I'm going to do my recap slash the good, followed by the bad and the ugly, so it is going to be good, bad, and the ugly format. Let me preface this by saying that I feel like this was probably my new least favorite episode. My last least favorite episode was episode 5, I believe, which was White Ruby the Shapeshifter. But I really didn't like this episode. And it sucks. I was really disappointed because I was so looking forward to Hippolyta's standalone episode. I felt like we were building up to that. I don't even feel like this was really a standalone episode because for roughly the first 20 or 25 minutes, we're kind of focusing on some of our other characters. And I was just really disappointed by the way they did my girl Anjanou Ellis. But let me start off with the recap. Before I get into that, I am going to be definitely doing the bad and the ugly. So let's just go ahead and start with the recap. We finally get back to Hippolyta and Dee briefly because they end up getting separated again later on. But we finally get back to Hippolyta and Dee, who we have not seen since episode 4, I believe, which was the sort of Goonies fantasy episode. We see Hippolyta and Dee drive to the site of the lodge and come across the charred ruins of the building using Uncle George's map from their last trip. Hippolyta, also found the remains of Dee's drawing kind of in the wreckage, so she knew that George was there. So they leave, they go back home. She's trying to get this golden orrery that she found in Hiram's house, which is now Letty's house. She's trying to get this golden orrery to work and light up, and at first she can't get it to work. She knocks it over and she figures out how to work it. She gets it to work and a key comes out, and there's also a quote. I'm going to go ahead and read you guys the quote. Hold on. Every beginning is in time and every limit of extension in space with some coordinates. So somebody plotted the coordinates because these coordinates repeatedly show, not the same ones, but the coordinates repeatedly show throughout the episode every time Hippolyta ends up, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoilers. Every time Hippolyta ends up sort of jumping through space and time using this time machine, this orrery, they show the different coordinates of where she is. Someone plotted them. I'm not going to say in this video where exactly they all are, but I will include a link in the description box for those of you that are interested in that type of thing and want to see that. So she gets the orrery to work, a key comes out, a quote with coordinates, and then we got our intertitle card, our title card, which was I Am, and it was the orrery with a little space woman. So I was like, okay, good, Hippolyta's finally getting her episode, I'm ready. And then we spend 25 minutes running around with Ruby and Christina / William, her boo, and Letty and Tick. William and the redneck woman really are dead. So it appears Christina's keeping their bodies. It looked like they were in some type of stasis, but they were definitely decomposed. I don't know how she's keeping them, and it's not explained, but it appears she's keeping their bodies so that she can use their blood for the potion. So I wonder, once they're sucked dry, will she not be able to use their bodies anymore? I don't know if that's going to be explained, but maybe it is. She gives the explanation to Ruby that she finished William's, magic metamorphosis spell. She tells Ruby about the Order of the Dawn, because Ruby's like, I want to know everything, tell me. She talks about how she wasn't allowed to join the Order of the Dawn because she was a woman, and that she sought out William to seduce him into teaching her magic so that she could impress her father and show her father that, she could be just as good even though she's a woman and not, the son her father wanted. But then as she started to learn magic, she started to realize that was small-minded and petty, which humans are interesting like that, have all this power and be, fixated on father's approval and that type of familial legacy is also an ongoing theme in Lovecraft Country. But Christina basically says, how she wanted more and how she wanted to get more out of magic and push it further. So she's firmly sort of setting up this relationship with Ruby for them to be in cahoots with one another, which I also feel is reinforced a little bit later on in the episode as well. We see Letty dreaming about Tick's ancestor, Hannah, the same dream as Tick, where she's running through the lodge, chasing the ancestor, and the lodge is on fire and it's burning around her. There are a few key differences. In Letty's dream, Hannah's holding a book. And in Tick's dream, Hannah is talking to him, but he can't hear what she's saying. She doesn't talk to Letty, but she does turn and look at her, and she has this book. And also in her dream, Letty's pregnant. So she dreams that she's pregnant. Obviously, we find out pretty much later on in this episode that she is pregnant. She's pregnant with Tick's baby. Again, we're getting more into these like ideas about like family and family ties, heritage, legacy, these blood ties. Really interesting again to see where this is going to go, because obviously now also this child also has this like blood power, this magic. Really interesting to see where that goes. They talk about how they're sharing this dream, and they deduce that the book that Hannah was holding in Letty's dream was the Book of Names. They're trying to figure out, like how, where is the book? At one point, Letty says, like, if Hannah escaped with the book, wouldn't there be magic in your family? Which even in the previous episode with GR, some of you guys remember I said in my review video that I felt like it was a little bit, not odd or strange, but like we see that Tick has had run-ins with like actual real magic before. And I said, I feel like it's a little bit strange that we know that Tick is a magical, mystical creature. Like it would have been really cool in that episode to see him have some type of like power, protective shield, something that he doesn't even know how to use or understand himself or know that he even has the power, but the power is like there in his, in him, especially now kind of finding out that they have this Book of Names as well. Just more kind of like missed opportunities that I wish had been dug into a little bit deeper, but they deduce that the Book of Names is somewhere in Tick's mother's side of the family, and that the book includes, as we already know, spells and instructions how to cast them. So Christina's going after the missing pages. Tick says, we're going to try to get the whole damn book. We immediately follow that scene with a scene of Montrose and Sammy. Sammy had some really interesting lines, just opening lines where he talks about seeing a colored woman at this department store, Marshall Fields, which is the place that Ruby wanted to work. And I feel like there's a really interesting commentary on generations that's also occurring in the show. Like Montrose and Sammy, we can tell that they're older. They look at things in a different way than Letty, Ruby, and Tick, who seem like they are pushing. Even Ruby, who's a bit of a coon, is pushing in her own way, like they're sort of pushing back against the white supremacist, overt power structure. They're pushing back. Montrose, Sammy, I feel like is pushing back a little bit more in his own way, but Montrose just seems really broken down and like he's in no position. Like he just really is trying to like keep his head down and like get by at this moment in time. And that's with regards to race, sexuality, this magic stuff, all that. And we see that even play out in this scene because Montrose is gaslighting Sammy. He's being really rude to him. He's being really mean to him. He's complaining about the food. He's complaining about the breakfast. And then when Sammy says, what the fuck? Like, what is your problem? Like, next you're going to complain about the coffee being too wet? Like, the hell? Why? And he says, like, why is it every time we get too close? Because like the last we saw of them, they were like out at the ball, and like Montrose was actually having a good time, and they actually kissed out in public, and now he's pushing Sammy away. And Sammy's like, why is it every time we get too close, you make a point to tell me how you don't care about me and you don't give a shit about me? And then of course Montrose with the gaslighting BS, I'm not doing it, da 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 da. Sammy gets up to go walk out. Montrose follows him out, and who's standing there in the hallway coming to go see Montrose? Letty and Tick. I was really surprised. That was a twist that shocked me. I wasn't expecting to see that coming. That was actually a really good twist leading to a really awkward situation because I was like, well, and now it's out there. Now it's outed. Very large revelations happening in an episode that's supposed to be about Hippolyta. And we haven't even gotten to Hippolyta yet, but it's supposed to be her episode. Moving on. Tick and Montrose have this whole confrontation where Tick asks, like, did his mom know about Montrose being gay? He says yes. And I just feel like this, while I'm watching this, like, really fraught angry interchange between the two of them, and sort of coming to the realization, like you can see the wheels turning in his head. And then he does say this later on with Letty of like, you know, this whole time, like, you've been gay, you used to beat me, whoop me, because you didn't want me to be soft, and I told myself that, you know, you were doing that because you cared about me, you were trying to protect me, you know, I was too sensitive, and I was different, you were trying to toughen me up, when really this whole time, like, you're gay, and you're in the closet, and you hate yourself, and you are ashamed, and you're taking it out on me. Major revelations. Like, it's some secrets in this house. It's a lot of secrets in this family. Tick is also going to have to find out at one point what they've been inferring, which is that Uncle George is his real dad. I don't know how that's going to be explained, especially because we're digging into his mom's family. Like, really, like, who is his mom? Who is his dad? Who, like, all this stuff is also going to have the impact on Hippolyta, you know, on Dee. You know, now we're getting into these, like, secrets and cracks and fault lines in this family. And cycles of trauma, you know, all that. And I so wish, I'm getting into the bad a little bit early, but I so wish that, like, we had a whole episode, like, just around this stuff. And we just let Hippolyta have her own episode. Because, like, this stuff I feel like also deserved, like, some more deep diving into. Like, him, Montrose, and Tick have their whole confrontation in the hallway, which was excellent. Well done, well written, well acted. Like, totally felt all this emotion. Like, I just totally felt everything. Tick walks out. Montrose asks Letty, why did they even come? Letty asked him the questions that they came to ask and found out stuff about that he knew about Tick's mother's family and that they are survivors of the Tulsa riot. So again, Tulsa keeps getting brought up. And she got a name of someone in St. Louis that they could visit, a friend of the family, da-da-da-da-da. And they're having this conversation in, like, an alley behind Montrose's house. Even the stuff where Tick is saying, like, you know, he said he had to whip my ass so I wouldn't be soft. But it was never about me, you know, like, it was about him. Like, he was hiding it for so long and taking it out on Tick. But, like, the whole conversation between Letty and Montrose takes place, like, off screen. There's the pacing. I know I've already said, like, I didn't like this episode, but I really felt the pacing was way off. There was a lot of, it seemed like things were happening, like, really quick, like, way too quick. People are getting from point A to point B. We're getting from point A to point B really, really fast. Like, how long was Letty in there talking to him? Couldn't have been that long, but she found out a whole lot in them 3 minutes, you know, like, the pacing was rough for me. It was rough for me to handle. But anyways, Letty finds out the information that they came there to get about a friend of the family in St. Louis that they can go visit. Tick ends up going to see the woman, ends up going alone for some real flimsy reasons, which I'm also going to get to later. The woman tells him that the book, she describes it as like a photo album or a family Bible. I really liked that phrase, a family Bible. Because a lot of families did used to have family Bibles back in the day that used to be, a lot of them were like inscribed with family trees with all the names, and they got handed down. So I thought that was a nice touch. But she said it's gone. It got burned in the Tulsa massacre. You know, it's gone. But then she says that she does have a picture of a family member, a cousin Ethel. She shows him the picture. Cousin Ethel got something on her arm, a birthmark. It looked to me like it was in the shape of an anchor. Turns out, of course, Tick has one as well on his back. So that's something new about his family as well that was introduced in this episode. Letty finds the orrery in Hippolyta's house. She's at Hippolyta's house because after they find out about the friend of the family in St. Louis from Montrose, Letty and Tick go to Hippolyta's house to try to borrow the car, Woody, because apparently Hippolyta's just running a motherfucking car service, because anytime these motherfuckers need a car, they go run to use her car. Maybe they need to invest in a car they own. That's neither here nor there. But they go to Hippolyta's house to try and get the car, and Ruby is there because Hippolyta is getting ready to leave to go look into what George was doing and to sort of investigate these coordinates that she found on the orrery. So they show up at the house. Letty and Ruby run into each other. They haven't seen each other for weeks, I guess. We don't really have a good idea of the time frame, but they haven't seen each other, I'm assuming, for a few weeks since they got into the argument over the house where Ruby found out that the mom left them an inheritance, which, you know, Christina was the one that orchestrated that, which I'm pretty sure she didn't fucking confess that shit to Ruby, even after Ruby said, tell me everything. But again, that's neither here nor there. So they haven't talked to each other in a while. They run into each other at Hippolyta's house. Letty decides not to go with Tick. She decides to stay and talk to Ruby and sort of bury the hatchet and help her babysit Dee and Dee's friends that come over. I felt like that was a really extremely flimsy reason. Maybe this is just me personally, but I felt like, I don't know, like, number one, I don't think Letty would let Tick go alone to see the family friend. Not that, like, he needs a babysitter or anything like that, but it seems like they've been trying to, like, stick together with all this, like, magic stuff because it's safer with everything that they've, like, seen. And, you know, like, they're digging into the past. So number one, I was like, maybe it should have been like a little more discussion about, you know, Tick going on riding the bus. So since Hippolyta's taking the car, he just says like, oh, I guess we're taking the bus to St. Louis. And then it's like he blink your motherfucking fingers and he's there. But whatever. Like, we don't see no bus ride, nothing. But whatever. So I just felt like that was all kind of flimsy. But, you know, like, they needed Letty and Ruby to talk. And, like, they needed certain things to happen. But I don't know. I wasn't really feeling it. Anyways, Letty finds the orrery in Hippolyta's house. She calls Tick to let Tick know, because I guess Tick left the phone number of the family friend. I was watching, like, how did she get the family friend's number? I guess Tick left the phone number of the family friend. She calls Tick, lets Tick know. Of course, Ruby sees, because Ruby's spying on her, because they're in Hippolyta's house. She sees Letty call Tick, and she sees her, like, use the words orrery and stuff. We know Ruby is in cahoots with Christina, who's also looking for the orrery. So, again, this is sort of like a setup for Ruby to be the weak link, or to see how strong her bond with Letty is. You know, like, is she going to sell them out? Is she not going to sell them out? Is she going to, like, give the orrery to Christina? We'll see where that goes. There was also a scene that I really appreciated when Letty and Tick ask Hippolyta for the car, and Hippolyta says, I'm going on a guide trip, I need the car. Like, it's my car now, I need it. And Tick sort of pushes back against her going on the trip because he wants the car. And, you know, oh, should you be going? Is that what Uncle George will want? And, you know, Hippolyta finally flexes on him, like, back up. Like, she put him in his place. Like, you still the kid around here, Tick. Like, just because Uncle George isn't here doesn't mean, you know, you get to, like, step into his place of telling me what to do. Or not that he should have even been telling Hippolyta what to do, which is something that finally gets handled a little bit in this episode as well, her relationship with George and how she felt about that. But it's like, Tick, you need to back up. So I was really glad to finally see her, you know, put him in his place, you know, kind of like, listen, you're not my man, you're not my father, I'm a grown woman, I'm older than you, you're the kid around here, I'm the elder in this relationship, you know. And I feel like this confrontation between her and Tick was kind of a long time coming, you know, this problem between Tick and Hippolyta. So I was glad to finally see that get addressed in a way, in a manner of speaking, and then to see Hippolyta kind of like go off to do her adventure, her arc of the show. So we see Hippolyta kind of setting off on her grand adventure. We see her driving to check out the orrery coordinates while listening to music in French. It's a wonderful scene. I'm sure you guys are going to tell me who the singer is, because I'm sure you know. So you guys can let me know in the comments. I do know that she sees Bessie Stringfield pass her on her motorcycle. I did do a Hidden Figures on her a few years ago. I saw last week that there was an uptick in comments on that video, and at first I was wondering why. And then somebody left a comment, and Queen also posted in Discord saying that they were leaving these comments because of Lovecraft Country. So it was really cool to see that little nod to Bessie Stringfield, who was a real woman. I will include a link to my Hidden Figures on her in the description box as well. We also see that, as we saw previously, Uncle George and Dee used to have their little routine where they would do their travel checklist, and then Dee would give him a travel comic. When Hippolyta tried to do the little checklist with her, she was upset, she was angry, she didn't want to do it, kind of like, I know you have everything, like, we don't need to do it, you know, almost like you know, like, Dad's gone, I don't want to do that, you don't have to treat me like a baby, like, you know, trying to, like, work through, they're still really working through the fallout of Uncle George dying, you know, but we find out that Dee actually did give her a comic. She put it in the bag, she just didn't want to do the whole, like, routine fanfare about it. And so that was just a really lovely scene of us seeing her kind of set out on her trip. She goes to Mayfield, Kansas. We do get an intertitle card for Mayfield. We also get one in this episode for St. Louis as well. And the coordinates basically led to, like, a field with an old observatory. So she found it. She's got the key. She goes in. She sees this machine. You know, she's interested in astronomy. She starts messing around with it. She's real curious. It's got the motherfucking DeLorean numbers on the side. I'm like, bitch, this is a time machine. Like, she puts the key in. She starts, like, looking at the numbers. It's whirring. It's spinning around. And she's like, mass, rotation, velocity, and radius. Like, she's figuring out what it needs, and she's so fucking smart, and I just love it. Like, I love Anjanou Ellis in this role as Hippolyta. Like, I want a Hippolyta in D spin-off series, please. HBO, you need to make it happen. As she's running these equations and calculations to figure out the coordinates and use this machine, the cops show up. And we hear we overhear little snippets of their dialogue as they're coming down. They're talking about, like, oh, what makes this machine so special? At first I thought they were showing up because, like, the machine had lit up. And so maybe they thought, and maybe they saw it from far away and, like, they thought somebody was in there. But it turns out that they were checking on it. She tries to hide, and they find her. And they're roughing her up. You know, they're trying to figure out who is she? How does she know how to turn it on? Of course, they're white police. She's a black woman alone. I was nervous. I didn't want to see anything. Y'all know what I mean. I wasn't trying to see nobody do anything against Anjanou Ellis. I would have had to turn it off. But luckily, Atticus shows up because Letty calls and says, like, Hippolyta got the orrery. Atticus shows up. I feel like it wasn't really explained how he knew where to go, but maybe they'll explain in the next episode. I'll let that slide, I guess, for now. He shows up. They get into a scuffle. They shot the machine. The machine gets really unstable. They open a portal. We see, like, places and spaces, like, flashing. Boom, 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 boom. They throw one of the cops in. Hippolyta shoots the other cop, and I was like, throw his ass in there, too. Hippolyta got sucked into the machine, and then shit just gets real trippy. It's like purple, space, dust. She's fallen through galaxies, and she lands as a meteorite on what appears to me to be a totally different planet. There's like I don't even know what, a spaceship or something, like, floating on top of her. Some Tron-looking soldiers show up. It's some alien shit. She wakes up stripped naked, and they put, like, a purple device in her wrists, and they give her a jumpsuit to put on. And when she tries to, she's in, like, a cell. She hits a barrier, and when she tries to, like, get out, the purple shit, it, like, slits her wrist, basically. So she has to stay there, and she can't get out, and she's trying. And then we see her, like, doing even more, like, trying to figure out, like, what's going on, running through possibilities. And I love the way that they show Anjanou. I love the way that they show Hippolyta, the way that they show how smart she is, how bright she is, how curious she is. They even use the word curious in this episode to describe her. She reminds me so much of Astrid from Fringe. Maybe that's, like, a weird comparison to make, but I loved Astrid too. And I just love these depictions of, like, of smart, curious black girls. It does something for me. I really enjoy it. This part, I did enjoy. Even though I know I said I didn't really like this episode, this stuff I did enjoy. I'm going to explain to you guys, like, why I didn't really like it later on. So then Garnet from Steven Universe shows up. I really have no other way of describing her, they, them, it's like an Afro-alien. Hippolyta's like, you can't keep me in here. And the Garnet keeps saying, like, you're not in a prison, like, I am. But she won't, she's like a celestial being. I'll put it that way. Like a celestial being, an alien, a goddess. And, she's not communicating in a way that Hippolyta really understands. So Hippolyta just tries to, like, figure out, is this a test? Can I get out of it? Or, can I get out of here? Can I figure a way out? What can I do? She says again some dialogue about her father. What would Dad say? I'm really interested in who her father is. I'm assuming that's going to be explained, wrapped up at a certain point, so I'm not going to harp on that. There's a lot of stuff that I'm really trying not to harp on until we get to the end, because I know there's definitely going to be some big family reveals here, so whatever. But she actually figures out a way to get the door open, and Garnet, like, pushes her back with the force, and she just keeps saying, like, you're not in a prison. Where do you want to be? Name yourself. Name yourself. Name yourself. Name yourself. Hippolyta's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. I want to be dancing on stage in Paris with Josephine Baker. Whoosh! Bitch, you on stage in Paris with Josephine Baker. It's a time machine. It's a time and space machine. So I don't even really know how to recap this. She's on stage with Josephine Baker. At first, she doesn't know the dance, and she's like enthralled by Josephine Baker. I don't know who the actress was playing Josephine Baker. Please, one of you guys leave her name in the comments, or if you don't, that's fine too. I'll just Google it. But I thought she was really interesting. She was really good and very, very effervescent. You know, they say that Josephine Baker had that something. And I think that this like woman playing her did a really good job of trying to sort of like capture that essence of what made Josephine Baker so captivating. I thought she was great. We see that like her and Hippolyta over time, they become, you know, sort of friends and confidants as like the American girls. She also depicts Josephine Baker as having this sort of like down to earth, you know, no nonsense side. She's an American girl. She was great. I should have looked up her name before I did this review, but I didn't. But she was awesome. I really enjoyed her, woman playing Josephine Baker. I'm not 100% sure how the time machine works. Like, I don't know if it's like a bubble. Is it like, you know, like, can she leave the theater and like, did she go see Paris or go see France? Or was it just like, you know, I want to be in Paris dancing on stage with Josephine Baker. So like, that was her existence. Like, all they did, you know, was it like Groundhog Day? Like, she's reliving the same day over and over. I don't know how it worked. And I'm going to get more into this in the bad, but I basically felt like these scenes with Hippolyta became like extended montage scenes, which I feel like makes it hard for me to recap them or describe them, because it's like she's dancing on stage with Josephine Baker for a while, and then she's in a warrior group. I mean, they do show coordinates, so I'm sure I could look up the coordinates and see exactly where she was, because they like showed the coordinates and then they like kept showing the coordinates every time anything changed. So I also think the coordinates were being used to depict time passing as well as like location, because it seems like it's a time and space machine. Because she's also like she's like clearly planet hopping, multiverse hopping. I don't know, it's like some Rick and Morty type shit, like multiverse almost. And the coordinates were like changing. And like I said, somebody like looked them all up. So she's like on a planet. So this planet to me looked like Barsoom, and there have been several John Carter Mars references, and the alien warriors are also fighting Confederate soldiers, of which John Carter was as well, Virginia. So to me, it looked like she went to Barsoom. Like I said, like it's hard to even give recaps, because it's like she's in Paris dancing with Josephine Baker for a while, and then she's in Barsoom learning how to fight. And then she's back with George in their apartment. And each of these moments is supposed to be like a growth exercise, or, you know, something for Hippolyta to grow. So like she's in Paris and she's dancing on stage, and she sort of learns how it feels to be free and to sort of taste freedom and to just like act, you know, freely, like, you know, just like not caring what anybody thinks, not feeling like she has to be held to this like white, racist, sexist. I felt like there was some stuff in there about feeling, you know, like you have to be upright and respectable, and, you know, I have to be the idea of the, you know, respectable Negro woman who, you know, that white people want me to be. And being in Paris, you know, sort of like got her to break free of that mold, and now she's filled with this rage and this anger, and she hates white people. She wants to fight white people. She wants to kill white people. So then she's like transported to Barsoom, and she is like she's like starting off as a warrior. She doesn't really have her warrior skills. Like you just said, you want to fight, you want to be a warrior. So now you're like over here learning how to be a warrior. And then she becomes like the leader of the warriors, and she leads them in a scene. It's a great scene. It's a kick-ass fucking scene against a bunch of Confederate soldiers. They like kill all of them, and then she like gives this final speech before like tons of soldiers like come. And then she's transported like back to talk to George and sort of have this final conversation with George and get some closure. So now we have like Hippolyta's learned how to like be free, and Hippolyta's learned how to like harness her rage and harness her anger, which we've also seen that she's been grappling with this anger for a while. We saw her like ripping the pages out of the book and like not really knowing how to like talk to Tick about how she feels about him butting in, trying to boss her around. So she figures out how to like harness her anger, and then she goes to like have this final conversation with George where she tells George how, you know, she used to be so big and expansive. We know when she was younger, she like even named, you know, a meteorite, even though since racism and sexism, her being a little black girl, they didn't want her to have it, so they gave the name to some white, you know, little white girl. And she talks about how when she was younger, she believed she could name anything out in the stars. Naming has also been a huge theme, obviously, throughout Lovecraft Country. The Book of Names, you know, Adam, God created life, and then Adam named the animals. He put things in their place. He created the hierarchy. Hippolyta naming, you know, naming the stars. And in this episode, naming herself, I am Hippolyta. I also noticed when she was the warrior, when she became the leader of the warriors, she crowned herself as well. The other woman did not crown her. She did it herself. So naming, sort of naming and claiming your power was a major theme. And she has this final conversation with George where she talks about how she made herself smaller and smaller, sort of fit into this box of what she should be, who she should be as a woman, as a wife, as black, all these things, and how George let her, you know, how he let her do that. He encouraged her to become smaller and smaller to even fit in this marriage. And he does apologize for that. It's kind of interesting to think, like, is this really George? Is this her subconscious? I don't think it's her subconscious. I think this is really George, you know, in a multiverse kind of way. But it's not really explained how it works. Like, you know, she was on stage dancing in Paris with Josephine Baker. Was that quote-unquote real? Like, will she now be in photographs with Josephine Baker? They became tight like this, you know? So if that was really George, did she now create, you know, an alternate reality where she went back in time and talked to him and told him these things? And so he had knowledge of all these things prior to his death. Time travel creates paradoxes. So now there's sort of a lot of questions about that. But so in the end, she actually takes George with him. I mean, in the end, she actually takes George with her to a spaceship. She says, like, I am, so she has to say, like, I am Hippolyta. So, like, I am Hippolyta, wife of George. I am Hippolyta, discoverer, you know, and she holds his hand and she takes him with her, and they're in a spaceship. She takes him to, like, a alien planet. To me, it looked like some original Star Trek type shit. Like, she had blue hair. It was very 60s. It was, like, very mod, the design. I did think the costume design for this episode was excellent as well. Like, the costume design for Lovecraft Country has been on point from the beginning, but I really enjoyed the costume design of this one quite a bit. Like, I loved her blue hair and, like, their old school 60s, like, Star Trek, like, space suits. Like, I thought it was really awesome. And then the Afro-alien Garnet, alien time goddess, comes back because Hippolyta, like, goes back to sort of talk to her and go see her and investigate her. And she basically has, like, mastered... This part kind of reminded me of Arrival, the movie Arrival, where once she, like, understood the alien circular language, she, like, understood time. She could, like, move forward and backwards through time in a different type of way. And she could, like, even communicate, like, with the aliens in a different type of way. And so this part kind of reminded me of that because it was like she got a grasp and understanding of the way that, like, time and space works conceptually through this, like, object, this orrery machine. And so Garnet is, like, and Garnet appears as, like, literally, like, a deity, like a celestial, like, purple star being, like, a black goddess, which was gorgeous. The black goddess come down to Earth, as Eartha Kitt said. And Garnet basically tells her, like, you could be integrated into our society of celestial beings because now you know everything. You know, basically, like, you're like a god now. Or you could be sent back to Earth. And so we hear Hippolyta kind of have this internal monologue of, like, how can I go back to Earth and go back to, like, my old body and my old life now that I know all this exists. But then she's like, oh, but I have to go back for D. Which I was like, oh, apparently you can time travel and still think of your daughter. Umbrella Academy. Because that was what I was thinking the whole episode. Like, how long has she been gone? I mean, like, you know, when it's time travel, there's kind of really no concept of time because it can seem like the blink of an eye. But I was wondering, like, no, you do still have a daughter. Like, you can't forget her. Like, you have to go back. So then she says, like, I have to go back for D, and then we're kind of left to assume that she is going to return. We see the tick kind of got, like, pushed out when she got sucked in. And there's a dead cop in there. They didn't push the secondary cop in, the Hippolyta shot. And the machine is basically broken. It shuts all the way down. So Tick takes the key out, but he leaves the comic that Dee made for her mom, the trip comic. It's like underneath the police officer with the blood all over it, and it says her name and everything, Diana Freeman. So obviously that's kind of open-ended as to they're going to know they were there, or they're going to know at the very least they were involved. And that was the end. So I do want to say that I love Ingenue Ellis. She was the best thing about this episode for me personally. She can do no wrong in my eyes. I really enjoyed the scenes where she was like in space in the White Room, trying to figure out what's going on, where she was figuring out how to work the machine. I just love how smart Hippolyta is. I love her relationship with Diana. I love, like Ingenue Ellis can really act her fucking face off. Like, I love the way that she like emotes and the way that she sort of creates this chemistry between herself and the people around her, Tick, Letty, Diana. I just love her. I love her. And I did love her segments because I do feel like she's doing the best she can with the material. But the material is really underwhelming here. So, as I've already said in the good, loved Ingenue Ellis. Love the costume design in this one. Love the set design. I loved all that stuff. But the bad, I really, really, really wish that, number one, this episode had sort of expanded out some of these interactions. Because a lot of this stuff has been a long time coming. This problem between Tick and Hippolyta, which I talked about earlier, with him trying to be some type of, like, authoritative figure towards her, that's been something that it's been a long time coming. Montrose being outed, huge, huge deal. Something that's been a long time coming. Something that we got just one little scene of Tick and Letty sort of talking about it later, and then we moved on. We didn't even see Montrose's own reaction with Sammy or with himself to being outed. We just kind of like moved on and glossed over it. And even if it's addressed in tomorrow's episode, these were like major events. Like Letty and Ruby, they finally had their conversation about what happened with the so-called inheritance. That should happen like 3-4 episodes ago, Like Letty apologizes and Ruby accepts her apology. I did like their scene. I do think that Letty and Ruby do play off of each other really well. I like the way the apology went, like the actual dialogue of, Letty saying like, I never thought that I would like turn into mom, like I'm not a hustler like her, but I did try to hustle you. Like when I tried to like get you in the house, like I apologize for that. Like mom was a user and I don't want to be like that, type shit. And then Ruby saying like, well, I never heard mom apologize a day of her life, so maybe you're not just like her. That felt to me like a very authentically like sister, like a sister moment, a sisterly way of dealing with the issue. Like, all right, whatever. You said what you had to say. I said what I had to say. Now we're going to move on. I like Ruby, the actress. I like her interactions with Jurnee Smollett more than anybody else on the show. They should have more of them two together. I really don't think, it's going to sound horrible, I don't think she should act in scenes with fucking Ingenue Ellis again, because Ingenue Ellis really puts her just to shame, and there's definitely something off about her accent. It's like flat, her American accent or whatever, because I know she's like a British Nigerian. Her accent is like flat or something. It's like one note, and it's like the wrong tone or something. Like I really feel like Ruby need not do scenes with Hippolyta, because like Ingenue Ellis like lives in Mississippi. Like her accent, just Ruby's accent is definitely off. It's noticeable. And when she's like acting in scenes with Ingenue Ellis, who number one is just a phenomenal actress, very authentic, very good accent. Ruby's accent is just, again, like a tinge too high. The inflection of her voice never changes. It's something like, I'm trying to like think of something she said so that I could try to like imitate it. It's something like, like, I never heard mama apologize a day in her life, so I guess you're not like her. You know, I'm a little bit too Southern, but it's up there, and it's flat, and it's off, and it's noticeable, and it's bothering me. It's bothering me. But I do think that a lot, like, I feel like all of that, all of what I just named, Tick and Hippolyta having their confrontation, Montrose being outed, Letty and Ruby having their talk, like, all that stuff, all of that should have been its own episode in Chicago prior to Hippolyta, or even Hippolyta figuring out how the machine works could have even been included, maybe towards the end. But I feel like all that stuff could have been its own episode, and then Hippolyta figures out how the orrery works, and then her traveling through space and time should have been at least, I guess at most, let me be fair, a 2-episode arc, if you ask me. The first half of this episode should have been its own episode, and then like the last portion with Hippolyta and her exploration should have been like at least a 2-episode arc. It felt like they were trying to like cram too much into one episode, which is, I'm going to go ahead and just jump into the ugly now. So a few episodes ago, somebody left a comment saying that they thought that the show was really hard to follow. I've never thought that the show was hard to follow, but this is the first episode where I felt like it was too much going on. This episode felt to me like 2 or 3 episodes crammed in one. It felt really disjointed. It was all over the place. I thought the pacing was off. As I said earlier, we're just jumping around. We're all over the place. It felt really rushed. It felt like we are zooming through plot points. We are zooming through major events happening. And I will say, to be fair, that since the beginning of the show, every episode has been action-packed with lots of twists and turns. So I know there's a part of that is definitely intentional. I know that this is like a fantasy show, and this was like horror. They play around with genres, and this was definitely like a total sci-fi fantasy episode in terms of genre with the time travel, an episode where anything can happen. But again, this is the first episode where I just felt like it was too much, and there were too many ideas, and the pace is just zipping along and just skimming the surface of concepts and moments that should be profound. Like Montrose being outed, that could be a whole episode just on that. Like Hippolyta, following the map into Lovecraft Country and investigating and then figuring out how the orrery works and time travel, that's an episode or 2. It was just too much, and like wildly disassociated plot lines all in one episode. And you guys know I said I felt like the last couple of episodes, like the last few episodes, have felt like filler. They felt like filler episodes. They felt like wheel-spinning episodes. And the problem with filler episodes is like when you get back to your core episodes, you're trying to cram shit in. We haven't seen Hippolyta and Dee in like 3 episodes, and now you're running out of time, right? And I hate that, and I hate that, and I hate that, especially for a series like this that started off so strong, and then we kind of got to the middle, and now we've had like the middle, and I don't want the quality to take a turn as we head into the end. There was a lot of plot armor in this episode, shit that made no sense, but happened anyway because the plot needed it to. I felt like Tick going to St. Louis alone, like there was a really weak excuse given, very flimsy reason as to why Letty didn't go with Tick to see the family friend, just like how they split up Dee and Hippolyta, even after making it seem like they were going to investigate together. These things make sense from a plot perspective, right? You have to split these people up. You have to have Ruby babysit Dee so she can run into Letty, and then like Ruby and Letty can have this moment, and then like Letty can find out about the orrery and Ruby, like these things make sense from like a plot perspective because you like need things to happen for the plot, but the actual reasoning that they're giving, like, yeah, I just had to deal with some family issues. You've been had to deal with some family issues. Like, the reasoning is very thin, like, behind a lot of it. I think it's meant to seem sort of clever and suspenseful. Like, they're babysitting together, and Diana invited some friends over. Letty's there with Ruby playing cards with the kids, and, they're having this conversation about, like, so where are you living now? Oh, I'm still on the north side. Oh, you with a white man? Like, they're involved on opposite sides. It's meant to be, again, like, suspense. But we, the audience, already know what's going on. And I don't think the writing is supporting it in certain points. Like, the writing is not supporting a lot of the concepts that they're trying to introduce. They've been writing some really flimsy reasons as to, like, and then Tick went off by himself. I've mentioned in another one that, like, what happened to, like, Ruby and Letty's, like, other brother. Like, he was used early in the episodes, so we could like hear them have a fight and like learn things about their family, and then they've never even talked about him again. You know, stuff like that. Like your writing still has to support the decisions that you're having your characters make. Even if we know that we need them to make these decisions for the plot, like you still have a responsibility as a writer to convince me that this is what they would do, you know? Speaking on what the characters do, Tick has literally replaced Ruby as my least favorite character. He's becoming one-dimensional in his own plot and his own show. His emotional mood swings are really aggravating. Like, I don't know if he's supposed to be stoic or what we're supposed to be getting from Tick at this point with this, like, these emotional problems. Like, he, like, hugs Letty, he, like, grips her so tight, and then he, like, pushes her away and, like, jumps into talking about Hannah and the mission. And later, like, again, like, even later on, after he, like, Montrose gets outed, and he's, like, crying, and they, like, have this conversation, and then, like, he goes to St. Louis alone. And I'm just, like, I just don't, like, Tick, your mood swings are giving me whiplash. Like, I don't understand your behavior. I don't like your behavior. I don't know what I'm supposed to be getting from Tick's character. And I love Jonathan Majors, and I feel like he's acting the way that they're writing the part. I don't think it's him. I just feel like they're writing him to be like a piece of shit. Like, I don't know, is it supposed to be like a PTSD thing and I'm supposed to feel like sympathetic? Because just all the time I just feel like, bro, like your mood swings are literally giving me whiplash. Like, you're so moody. And again, we're rushing through plot because like Montrose being outed and like all that stuff is like very serious, and like this is like another huge part of why Tick is so like emotionally unstable. Like, can we get some fallout from that? Can we get something with that? Like, it was just too much racing around in this episode, and having actors just like the mood swings are just like a damn pendulum, and I don't know what's going on. And again, I know that like this show has been unpredictable, and I feel like they're really writing Tick this way on purpose. I just don't like it. I also felt like during Hippolyta's travels, like shit was just happening. Shit just happened, and then we got a very nice monologue from Ingenue at the end of each little part, like bookending, explaining what we just watched and how it's important for her character, and then on to the next thing. Like, again, it felt very much like we're just skimming the surface of these major events that are occurring. Like when Ruby is white, when she's white Ruby, and she goes to sit at the lunch counter, and she's able to eat at the lunch counter, and then she doesn't even have to pay. They're showing me what that feels like for Ruby, right? Now, you guys know what I said about the episode and how I felt about Ruby, like, and how she, like, leaned into that. But they're showing me, even though later on she does have a conversation about it with William, Christina, because he asked her, like, oh, why didn't you use the money? And she says, like, oh, because I didn't need it. But I actually see it. It shows it to me. I felt like with Hippolyta's travels, they just kind of, like, show us, like, you know, they just, like, show us something, and then we get, like, a monologue where she has a conversation with Josephine Baker that explains everything we just saw and everything that she's feeling, instead of showing us, instead of us seeing her emote, instead of us seeing her have interactions with people in Paris or on the stage or whatever, you know? And then again, later on, we get a monologue of her, we get a montage of her becoming, like, the warrior or whatever. We don't learn any of these people's names. We don't know anything about it. And then we hear from our final monologue when she gives the speech, okay, and this is what Hippolyta learned. It was very, like, ABC 1, 2, 3, you know, after school special. The only, like, the part that I like the most, I'm not going to say the only part that I like, but, because I did like the girl playing Josephine Baker. But the part that I liked the most was when she actually had, like, her very last conversation with George. Because, like, she obviously has been, like, searching for some type of catharsis and closure. And she finally got it. But even then, I wish we could have even got, like, a little flashback or something as they're talking about how George made her feel small and all this stuff. We got little hints of it when George was still alive. Like, when she asked if she could go on the trip with him, and he said no. And then he called her back and was like, maybe next time. But that was, like, episode 1. They could have showed us, like, other situations, other events where George, you know, maybe dissuaded her from studying something or looking at something. Instead, we just get them talking about it. Talk, tell us, exposition. They shortchanged my girl. Like, they shortchanged Hippolyta. Like, they didn't show us. They just had us talking about it. Just talk. But yet, we get to get a fucking deep dive into 3 months of the fucking Asian girl. Like, we get to get a fucking deep dive, you know, into other side characters. But Montrose and Hippolyta, and, you know, they basically have to share an episode and other things that happen too for major events. I feel the little girl D is being criminally underused. Like, I don't know. I just felt like this episode, after 2 episodes of randomness that were better written and more enjoyable to watch for me than this one, they tried to give us this one that had about 5 episodes crammed in one, and not even give us the real character development with Hippolyta that they gave us with other characters, which is really frustrating for me to watch, especially because I feel like I've been waiting for this episode and it let me down. Like, just moments that should have been deep and profound with various characters were glossed over a little too much for me in this episode. The pacing was off. I'm tired of Tick's mood swings. There's only 3 episodes left now, and I really hope that this doesn't stick for these last 3 episodes of this just like wild pace of racing through shit and not even giving us time and space with these characters to like deal with the seriousness of all these things that are happening. Because it feels cheap, and it feels like it makes the story cheap. You know, like, this should have been an episode, a great episode where, like, I finally got some, like, catharsis for Hippolyta's character, and I just felt like we were just, like, racing through it till we can get to the next one. Love Anjanou Ellis, though. Love her. Love her. She's amazing. Like, I do love seeing her perform, which is why I wanted more from this episode. I felt like I got robbed of some moments. But that's what I thought. I will include some links and information in the description box. This is my new least favorite episode because, like I said, even the previous 2 episodes that I felt were filler, I thought were better written, way better pacing, way better emotional payoff than what we got here. And just, it was just too much fucking crammed in. Too much. Like, too much. I can't believe we got a reveal that Letty is most likely pregnant. Montrose got outed. And all of Hippolyta's orrery stuff, including most likely Christina's going to now know that they have the orrery because Ruby and Letty, in one episode. I'm not feeling it. I hope that as we head into this last, 3 episodes, this like 3rd act of the show, they get back on track. So that's what I thought. Lovecraft Country episode 7. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments. Again, there will be links and information in the description box. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace.